Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Before we begin the next part of our day, by a show of hands, how many of you present today went to last week's GBF retreat? Wow. I'm sure you had a beautiful time. It's always a wonderful event. Welcome back. It's nice to have everybody back. We'll begin our day. Before we hear from Tom, we're going to go ahead and do our traditions to go around and say our names. My name is Roy.
Jordan.
Vin. Greg.
Prasada Chitta.
Michael.
My name is Joe.
John.
Gary.
John.
I'm Michael.
I'm David.
Jose.
Silas.
Lynn. Scott.
Grisha.
Don. My name is Bruein.
Bill. Matthew.
Larry. I'm Clint.
Dennis.
My name is Mark.
My name is Jerry.
I'm Oswaldo. I'm Craig.
I'm Dennis.
I'm Jim.
I'm Mike.
David.
My name's Tom. Joey.
Tommy. Peter. I'm Hal. Joe.
Jay.
Tom.
Raymond.
John.
Thank you. Tom Bruein is a psychotherapist in private practice in San Francisco and works with a primarily gay male clientele. He has practiced various forms of meditation and yoga for over 40 years, Vipassana meditation for over 20. In his therapy work, he specializes in combining traditional psychotherapy with mindfulness practices. He writes a column, The Examined Life, which is published bi-weekly in the San Francisco Bay Times. His spiritual home is Spirit Rock Meditation Center. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Good morning. Well, I brought a few notes. It's going to be a while. I wanted to thank you all for having me back so soon. The last time I was here was the morning of the, it affects me even as I talk about the Orlando massacre. I walked in and there were 49 candles and everyone was just, we were all, horrified and sick and angry, sad, everything. And my topic was suffering, so it was kind of appropriate, but it was like, why underline it, in a way. Actually, it was Samvega, which is the Pali term for the moment in the archetypal spiritual path according to Buddhism, when you realize the reality of suffering and it becomes imperative to find something to do about it. And I really felt carried by the group. It was a really beautiful time for me, and so I'm glad to come back. But after I left, I kept thinking, well, when was my Samvega moment? I mean, the Buddha was 29 years old when he left the palace for the first time and was faced with the reality of sickness, old age, and death. At 29, and I was thinking, I never had a Samvega moment because there wasn't a moment in my life. I mean, I'm a white guy, and very privileged by world standards. We were pretty poor growing up, but I knew about sickness, old age, and death. I mean, when I saw my grandfather gasping for air because he was dying of lung cancer when I was a little kid, and I think most of us did know. And the irony of it struck me was that the Buddha, who was a great world teacher, up until 29 was probably one of the most naive, clueless guys who ever lived. Because he was this privileged man who he didn't know, according to the myth, this one in the story, that people die and that they get sick and that they suffer. I thought, wow, and that my spiritual path did not begin with the realization of suffering. That was always there. But the glimpse that there was something other than suffering, something more, something beyond that, that's what started my own quest. And I was thinking of the line, there's a line in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna tells Arjuna, we are saved not by what we move from, but by what we move toward. And that's, I guess, what I'd like to talk about today. What in the spiritual path are we moving toward? What's it about? Why are we doing this? And one way to begin is I want to read a poem. Many of you have heard this poem before. It's kind of made the Dharma rounds. But Howie Cohn read it at the Spirit Rock Labor Day retreat, and I hadn't heard it in years. And I thought this would be a really good poem to read today. It's called The Little Duck by Donald Babcock. Now we are ready to look at something pretty special. It is a duck riding the ocean 100 feet beyond the surf. No, it isn't a gull. A gull always has a raucous touch about him. This is some sort of duck, and he cuddles in the swells. He isn't cold, and he is thinking things over. There is a big heaving in the Atlantic, and he is part of it. He looks a bit like a mandarin or the Lord Buddha meditating under the bo tree, but he hardly has enough above the eyes to be a philosopher. He has poise, however, which is what philosophers must have. He can rest while the Atlantic heaves because he rests in the Atlantic. Probably he doesn't know how large the ocean is, and neither do you. But he realizes it. And what does he do, I ask you? He sits down in it. He reposes in the immediate as if it were infinity, which it is. That is religion. And the duck has it. He has made himself a part of the boundless by easing himself into it just where it touches him. I love that poem. It's cute, but it's also, the reason I read it is I think it points to what I've always regarded as the essence of spiritual life, which is it's about connectedness. It's about the sense of being a part of something larger than ourselves, and how it's understood in different ways in different traditions. But it's important because they say that it's a cliche that the sickness of our time is alienation. That we experience ourselves most of the time as skin-encapsulated egos. We're fundamentally separate from each other, and we're certainly separate from the rest of the universe because everything outside of our skin is unconscious, dead, and purposeless, fundamentally different from ourselves, although it ultimately engulfs and destroys us, and that's it. That's the kind of the worldview that most of us have. And in such a world, we will always be strangers in a strange land, where, despair is always just a little, it's not far away from that worldview. And the spiritual worldview there are many spiritual worldviews, are an attempt to go beyond that dismal view of life, I think. This kind of alienation always, I think, ultimately leads to despair. The sense of connectedness leads to joy and a sense of freedom, and I'm going to give an example of it. I want to read another thing. This is the first chapter, or the first paragraph of an essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's called The Oversoul. So when he was writing his essays, the Upanishads had been recently translated into English. And the essential idea of the Upanishad is that art thou, Atman is Brahman, That is, your individual soul is the world soul, not like you're connected the way a drop of water is connected to the ocean, but that in some sense that the rational mind can't understand, you are the ocean. You're the whole thing. And this profoundly affected Emerson, and he called that reality the oversoul. And I want to read just what feel what it felt like for him to have this. So the oversoul. The supreme critic on all the errors of the past and the present, and the only prophet of that which must be, is that great nature in which we rest as the earth lies in the soft arms of the atmosphere. That unity, that oversoul, within which every man's particular being is contained and made one with all other. That common heart, of which all sincere conversation is the worship, to which all right action is submission. That overpowering reality which confutes our tricks and talents and constrains everyone to pass for what he is and to speak from his character and not from his tongue, and which evermore tends to pass into our thoughts and hand and become wisdom and virtue and power and beauty. We live in succession, in division, in parts, in particles. Meantime, within man is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. And this deep power in which we exist and whose beatitude is all accessible to us is not only self-sufficing and perfect in every hour, but the act of seeing and the thing seen, the seer and the spectacle, the subject and the object are one. We see the world piece by piece, as the sun, the moon, the animal, the tree, but the whole, of which these are the shining parts, is the soul. He goes on rhapsodizing like this for 24 pages. It's quite a read if you like this kind of stuff. It's a classic of mystical literature, which also makes a lot of Buddhists uncomfortable, at least American Buddhists, because it comes perilously close to using the G word. And we can't have that. And soul, I can hear Tom Hanks. There's no souls in Buddhism. Because in Buddhism, they don't say Atman is Brahman. It was the Buddha who said, I don't teach Atman. They have An-Atman or Anatta. It means not soul or no soul. There is no individual self, which American Buddhists amaze me. We're allergic as a group to religious ideas generally, but we'll embrace no self and emptiness with very easily. I think because they're so grim sounding to our Western ears, but they are not grim sounding in the East. They are not. The idea of no self is one of the it's generally thought to be one of the least comprehended, least understood ideas in Buddhism. But one way I think of getting to an understanding of that idea, of what the Buddha I think was trying to get at, this is just my view, is to think of it this way: if there is no individual self, if there's no self, there also is no other, right? Self and other are boundary, they arise together. You can no more have one without the other than you could have a fence with only one side. And so that's why this was considered a tremendously liberating idea. You are unbounded. It isn't saying you don't exist. It says you exist beyond your wildest imagination. You are boundless. You're not separate. We're not separate from one another and the world. Alan Watts said about this alienation, he said, we don't come into this world. We come out of it. Just as an apple tree apples, the universe peoples. Then that's the sense of it. That is the sense that I think that this word, you are boundless being. And that's why, when you think of it that way, it begins to become possible to understand a lot of the very weird things that you hear in Buddhism, such as this very famous line from Kalar Rinpoche. You've probably heard this. He said, "We live in illusion and the appearance of things. There is a reality. You are that reality. When you understand this, you see that you are nothing. And, being nothing, you are everything. That is all." I mean, so the irony, the really kind of the punchline, really, of 2,500 years of doctrinal dispute between Hinduism and Buddhism is very funny. It's Atman is Brahman, you go in that direction experientially and meditatively, or you go in this direction, Anatman, no self, you come to exactly the same experiential reality of this boundlessness, which can't be expressed, the mystery, which the Buddha would not describe in positive terms. The terms that they use were the deathless, the unborn, the unoriginated, the unconditioned, stuff like that. But the point is, because the rational mind can't understand it anyway, but we are in some deep sense connected. And the point is not to figure this out, since anyone who believes Atman is Brahman or anything like that has to concede that that's beyond, that doesn't make any sense at all to the rational mind. But the idea is that the heart knows this, has always known this, and that the point of spiritual practice is to come into deeper and deeper awareness of this. And that's the point of the whole trip. Not just to end suffering, but to realize a life that lifts us a little out of degradation and suffering and shows us something more. And that's really, I think, what spiritual practice in Buddhism is about. Listen to Sogyal Rinpoche. Here he's giving mindfulness instructions in the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. So he says, "Above all, be at ease. Be as natural and spacious as possible. Slip quietly out of the noose of your habitual anxious self. Release all grasping and relax into your true nature. Think of your ordinary, emotional, thought-ridden self as a block of ice or a slab of butter left out in the sun. If you are feeling hard and cold, let this aggression melt away in the sunlight of your meditation. Let peace work on you and enable you to gather your scattered mind into the mindfulness of calm abiding and awaken in you the awareness and insight of clear seeing. And you will find all your negativity disarmed, your aggression dissolved, and your confusion evaporating slowly like mist into the vast and stainless sky of your absolute nature." I think it's a beautiful hope to have. And it's not an unusual kind of experience. I mean, I think probably many people in this room I've had glimpses of it. What got me going on my spiritual path was a moment of awakening that occurred spontaneously to me when I was 20 years old, out for a walk one day, and suddenly realizing, oh my God, look at this. And that was that. And I couldn't put it into words, but I was suddenly had this sense of, I was kind of depressed and thinking about school and stuff and being 20 and suddenly, there was this opening, and from then on, it was, well, how do I deepen this? What do I do? This is good, And the faith was that, faith is another word we don't like much in the West, because when I grew up, faith meant believing in the virgin birth and the resurrection, and believing in stuff that really you couldn't believe. But the faith was in this, that this was encouraged here, was that wasn't just a happy Julie Andrews moment. That it was actually what it presented itself as an insight, as a a moment of seeing into the nature of things, and that which is how it presents it, how these moments present themselves. Is that right? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Yeah, lots of. So that this is the best in us, and I think the spiritual path is about making the best in us the guiding light, and trusting it. And it's a provisional trust, maybe we're wrong, maybe it is just a happy Julie Andrews moment. But in trusting it enough to investigate it, to do those practices that feed it, that foster it, and to live a life that a kind of an as-if life, and a life as if it's true. Because the more we live a life, in Buddhism, there are 3 causes of suffering, right? The 3 poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. And the delusion is basically this idea of this constricted, separate self, in conflict with all the other separate selves. And then the greed and hatred is the consequence of that delusion, of getting mine the rest of you can go to hell, kind of thing. Should I? Well, politics. As I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking about this week, and I was wondering, is there a group in America called Buddhists for Trump? I was thinking, how could you can't? I'm thinking of its campaign slogan would be greed, hatred, and delusion. Make America great again. So anyway, that's just, if you find Buddhists for Trump, I really would like you to tell. I want to talk to them. But I also have trouble understanding Christians for what's his name for Trump too. Anyway, but it suggests a way of life, right? It suggests that we live as if we're not separate beings, but as if our true being is connectedness with other people. And with the whole of life, with all beings, with animals, and and with the natural world, not because that's right, but because that's how things really are. And it is not possible to be happy if we live in illusion, if we live in contention with life, so that our true happiness lies, in living this way. So, for instance, I want to give a few examples of that. Most spiritual traditions say that forgiveness is good and being unforgiving is bad. I don't know any spiritual tradition that doesn't say that. I wish I paid more attention to it personally, but Buddhism has a particular understanding of this. I know that when I hold a grudge, when I create a grudge against somebody, then in my experience, we both incarnate as separate beings, right? I'm the victim. I'm the wronged party who gets to feel self-righteous. You are the asshole. And you will be the asshole as long as I'm as long as I'm that, any forgiveness I give you is going to be smarmy and phony and superficial, right? So it's when I see that I'm not separate from you, that actual, from the heart, real forgiveness becomes possible. So here's another thing I want to read. There's a story about the Buddha, and the Buddha didn't talk about forgiveness much at all. He wasn't, it was said he never forgave anybody, which is kind of interesting, but here's why. So the story from one of the Mahayana sutras, I can't remember, I can't find which it was, but I'm pretty sure this is in one of them. The story is that the Buddha is sitting under a tree surrounded by his disciples, and this really angry man comes up and spits on him. Because he was kind of a heretic for his time. He had a lot of enemies, actually. So this guy spits on him and everyone freezes, and the Buddha just calmly looks up and wipes it off of his face and says, "What now?" And the guy was expecting a fight. So he's flustered and he runs away, and then he's stricken with remorse and guilt all over the next 24 hours, because you don't disrespect a holy man in India. That's bad. And so the next day he comes back and he prostrates himself before the Buddha and begs him to forgive him. So this is the Buddha's response. Forgive you for what? The man you spit upon is gone. Men are like rivers, changing from moment to moment. The river has flowed much since yesterday, and though I may look the same, I am not. Likewise, neither are you the man who came to spit upon me. That man was angry, upset. This man before me bows at my feet, is open, willing. So there is nothing to forgive. Those two men, the one who spit and the one on whom he spit, are no more. That was his response. So it was his understanding of boundless being, really, that we are rivers. That if that's really your experience of yourself and other people, then I guess there's nothing to stick a resentment to, which is why he never forgave anybody. It's kind of a beautiful view that we could do our best to live as if that's true. And I think that's what Sila, Buddhist ethics, is about, is living as if the highest vision of things is the truth, and as if we know it. Because then the mindfulness practice, the various forms of practice, and the ethical life, feed each other. We live as if it's true, and we do the internal work to realize that it's true. And so another example of the ethic. Well, the basic ethical principle that I love the most that all this suggests is, give no one cause to fear you. When I was growing up, that I would have thought that would be suicide. Give no one cause to fear you. Generosity, give of yourself. The interesting thing is that where are we? We've got some time left. All the research that there's research now in positive psychology on the nature of happiness and so on. And what's very interesting, that all the research on what makes people really happy aligns with the way of life that this sense of boundless being suggests. For instance, it's a truism that money doesn't buy happiness. We don't believe it. We don't. How many of it? Almost all Americans in the richest country in the world believe we don't have enough money. I don't. I'd be happy if I had. There's a part. It's just we're conditioned, But the research does show that yes, if you don't have the basics of food, clothing, shelter, medicine, you live in misery. Once those basic needs are met, further increases in money hardly change your level of happiness. Even winning the lottery. It does, people get this elation, but if they're tested later, their level of happiness stays about the same as it was before. Returns to baseline. And in fact, often gets worse because then they have all these relatives trying to get their money. Their lives get more complicated. But there is one way that if you have more money than you need, that giving it away makes you happy. I gave it away. Giving it away. In other words, generosity makes people. Money doesn't make you happy, but if you have the money, being generous with it does. What's the other ones? Gratitude. Let's see. People who, in one experiment, people who kept gratitude journals on a weekly basis, exercised more regularly, reported fewer physical symptoms, felt better about their lives as a whole, and were more optimistic about the upcoming week compared to those who recorded hassles or neutral life events. That when you actually focus your awareness on what you're grateful for, your happiness is impacted. What else? There was one more that I wanted to talk about. Happiness in general. The pursuit of happiness, when people are interviewed and their personal happiness is their main goal in life, they're the unhappiest. The pursuit of happiness don't make you happy. The pursuit of meaning, the pursuit of connectedness, the pursuit of service, the pursuit of spiritual understanding, these kind of goals do result in happiness. So once again, the happiness is about connectedness. It's about doing what we can to let go of our attachment to these individual selves and to find connection with the others and the whole. Well, I think I'll stop there. But if we could have a discussion, that would be great. Any questions, comments, or criticisms?
Who is it that's happy? Do you know? In this context. Because clearly,
That's not fair. You can't ask me a hard question.
I love your talk, Dan, as always. But, William James said to try out an idea and live with it and see what it does for you.
Yes.
That was pragmatism. That's
Right, pragmatism, yeah.
Is that what you mean by as if? Sort of?
Yeah, I was about to quote him, actually. He said, what's the cash value of these metaphysical ideas? It was a little more, but he meant the same that. He said, what effect does it actually have on our lives? Who is happy? Well, the Buddha was, one of his titles was Buddha, the awakened one, but also Sukhiya, the happy one. He was happy. And I suppose he might say something like, happiness there is, but none who is happy. He was always saying stuff like that. That when you find happiness, that's the irony is you're not there. At least your limited self isn't there. Is that what you were referring to?
Well, it's just all curious to me.
Yeah.
This whole thing. I believe I've had deep experience of how we're all connected, but we certainly seem to have individual experiences.
Oh, yes. Yeah. No one...
So the non-self seems just a terrible translation of...
Yes, yeah. Well as the other. Self, non-self. These are all... I think the attitude to take toward these, all these theological ideas is that at best they're fingers pointing to the moon. That's why we don't have to fight over them. They are, none of them is true. Not self, the great self. These are all words, right? That attempt to describe experiences which really are ineffable. And so I think that's the liberating truth, that why all this fighting over this stuff has been so tragic and pointless. It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what the mind thinks about all of this stuff. It matters what we experience, right? What we realize in our awareness and what we do in our conduct. Right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Sir?
Thank you, Tom.
No, thank you.
That story of the Buddha and the guy who spat on him struck me. I know holding resentment only harms yourself. The old story of holding a hot coal, waiting to throw it at someone else, only harms you. But, in that case, the guy came back and he was, asking for forgiveness. So it's pretty easy to say, oh, it's all
forget it. Yeah, yeah.
It's not the story of the guy coming back and spitting on the Buddha 10 days in a row.
Yeah.
And so, if one takes that same approach, like, hey, it's okay, about day 9 or 10, you start to feel like kind of a fool.
Yeah, and you are.
So, how do you reconcile that in the real world? I mean, we can't wait around for people to come and beg for forgiveness, because then we'll just be unhappy.
Yeah, you're raising the really good question, is that it's wonderful to have these great insights and ideas. And when I'm at Spirit Rock, butter wouldn't melt in my mouth after about a week. I love everybody. And then I come back, and usually on the road home, I'm already mad at somebody who's cut me off on the freeway or something.
Don't take Uni home from a retreat.
What's that?
Don't take the bus home from a retreat.
Yeah, right. Well, you can always see there's a number of ways of responding to this. You can always pull in the idea of that there's the idea of absolute truth versus relative truth. That the absolute truth is that there is no separation between anything and anything else. You can realize that, but then also there's that we live in this relative world. You can say that. Another way I respond to this thing about forgiveness is to tell the story that I heard about a woman who was living with her abusive boyfriend who was beating her up all the time, and she was confused, and they say codependent. She was trying to help him, and finally she got clear, and she threw his sorry ass out of the house, and got a restraining order and everything. But she was also doing her work, her spiritual work. And a year later, she was able to say, "No, I have forgiven him. I no longer evict him from my heart. I have forgiven him, but the front door is locked." And those things aren't mutually exclusive, So I think that's kind of the idea is you don't tolerate you never tolerate abuse, right? You as a human being in this relative world, like all other human beings, deserve ordinary human respect. And no one, no matter what another person has suffered in the terms of abuse, they can never acquire the right to abuse you, and you the same. So that's all true. But we don't have to live, as constricted beings who are angry all the time, which we do too much, don't we? I mean, and it's getting worse, if you ask me, these days in this country. I walk around San Francisco, and my God, the amount of honking that goes on, the amount of anger, and we've become a really angry people. I can understand why. There's a lot of reasons, good reasons why, but that's what we need. What I want to work against in my own life, is not to feel so constricted and resentful and angry. Those are very easy places for us to go, and we have good reason. Many of us have been badly treated and abused in our lives. All the more reason to work at finding peace in ourselves. And also, when I do therapy with people who have been abused, I never say, well, you should forgive. Forgive, when people are recovering from being abused and trauma, forgiveness comes at the end of a process, if it comes at all. It comes not at the beginning. And first, first of all, in order to get over a wrong, you have to first admit one was done. You really have to face what was done and feel it in front of a witness who is sympathetic and compassionate, ideally. Then, and recover. I mean, you may have been really damaged by it. Then, when that's done, often it's really a testament to the human spirit that forgiveness often spontaneously arises. And there are also spiritual practices, of forgiveness, meditations, and so on to help that along. But it can never be coerced, and you can't preach forgiveness to people. So that's So that's what some of the stuff I usually say about forgiveness. Hal?
I'm thinking that, in more general terms, this is where engaged Buddhism comes into play. When we get off the cushion and go out and deal with this world that is generally conditioned against what we're practicing.
Yes.
And I'm always looking for the way in which my engagement can happen. I don't feel that I'm engaged enough.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, not you, me. I mean.
It's so easy to
Yes. Yeah. The Dalai, that's one of the things the Dalai Lama said. He said one of his problems with other Buddhists was that they talk a lot about compassion, but they don't do much about it. That was his criticism. He's right. That bringing these ideas into the world and actually trying, that is the spiritual life. And the world's in real need of it right now. Oh my God. I mean, I'm struggling a little. I don't know how you guys are doing, but with this election, I just feel disgusted and dispirited by it, and how to not let that take me over, and how to be kind, how to be gentle when the country is when there's so much greed, hatred, and delusion going on. Delusion, especially, just like we're lost in many ways, and so we need engagement. We need to bring this out into the world. However you're going to do it, I do it my way, but there's often the thing it just isn't enough, and I see myself falling all the time, which is why I need the practice. So, yeah.
Thanks for your talk. It's stirred up a lot of things that I'm struggling with.
Great.
I don't know if this is so much a question as a do with it what you want. Not only am I connected with the Buddhist tradition, but also the Dharma tradition, which says similar things about. And there actually was an aphorism this morning from that. When I was reading my Facebook, saying, if you're seeking, it's similar to what you said. If you're looking for happiness, you're not going to get it. It says if you're seeking, well, basically you're not going to get it either. And again, it's developing gratitude and focusing on that.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't dispute that. I mean, that's a great message.
Yeah.
Except that I do dispute it.
Clint.
Massive inconsistency. I know enough for that. I really do see the wisdom of that, but I don't see how sometimes it's kind of like my life is really good right now in a way that it hasn't been in the past, but there's always a nagging sense of unrealized potential, and since that, without putting myself down, as good as I am, I could be better, and I want to be better.
Yeah.
And however you want to define better at. And I don't know how you work that contradiction between really wanting to realize your full potential when you don't think you're realizing it right now, versus don't seek. Just and whatever your life condition is, just be grateful for that, and don't try to find something else.
Yeah, I know. All of this stuff is just, I feel all those things too, it's all paradox. That's the weird, that's why they use this thing of absolute versus relative truth. That, who was it? Suzuki Roshi said, you were all perfect as you are. Man, you could use a little improvement. That both are true. I do think that self-compassion is a really important practice for Americans. We are because of this individualistic, competitive culture, we're really hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
And to forgive and accept that you're limited, that you will always be imperfect. the end, you'll come to the end of your life, and there will be things undone and things you wish you had done. That's how it is. That's how this existence is, right? But we suffer from low self-esteem. You've probably heard this story. There's a story about the Dalai Lama. Two people. Should I tell her? As I remember the story, he was talking to a bunch of people, and an American raised his hand and asked, "What do you do about low self-esteem?" And as I recall the story, he said, "What? What's that?" And he said they explained what low self-esteem is, and he went around the room and says, "Do you have this? Do you have this?" All the Americans in the room had low self-esteem, and none of the Tibetans knew what the hell he was talking about. So this is cultural, that we are. This is capitalism, right? I mean, this is what it does to us. We are not enough, And we even bring that into our spiritual life. That's why I think self-forgiveness, self-compassion is a really fundamental practice that we should all be doing. Because you can't give it to others if you don't give it to yourself. And it's hard. So.
Following up on the honking and the anger, I ride a motorcycle, and people are constantly turning right in front of me without a turn signal, turning left in front of me without a turn signal, just stopping, and you don't know what they're doing. And every single time I have to go, after I get pissed off, which happens every single time, I have to go, oh, I can just let that go. This is what is. And then I have to go, oh, and I can forgive myself for getting pissed off. So it's like, this constant wheel that's sort of like enlightenment through
driving, yes.
Through surviving traffic,
Yeah. Are you able to do that? I mean,
not yet. It's gotten a little easier, but it's very slow.
Well, I have issues with motorcycle drivers. And when I'm a pedestrian, with bicyclists and cars. I mean, it's really interesting. Whatever I am,
that's right.
The other is the asshole. Have you noticed that? And I do this practice. We're all part of each other. And it's a crowded city, and and it's work, and I do my best. Like you do.
Can I ask a quick question about traffic? I've noticed in the last 6 months to a year that people are not respecting stop signs, stop lights. And I live on Potrero Hill, so maybe it's there or that's where it's really happening. Does anybody else experience this? Is it everywhere? Okay. I was literally at a stop light with my blinker on to make the left turn, waiting. A guy came behind me, swerved out of the way into the opposite lane, and made a left turn on a red light. Yeah. And I was just shocked. Yeah. But I've been seeing that all the time. And I have not run into any police officers yet, but I'm going to go. And the next one I see, I'm going to say, what's going on? I mean, I used to see them giving tickets. I used to see people enforcing traffic laws. I don't see that anymore. It's like lawless out there. It's crazy. I'm telling you. It's it's scary.
You're the only one who's experienced this, right? It's your reality.
Well, I'm a native San Franciscan. I've never seen it this bad.
I've never seen it this bad.
I remember a kind of a laid back hippie town in the 60s. It wasn't quite. It wasn't that, but it was better. It was different. It was different, and we are a. I like to blame the millennials. Those are the ignorant. But there is something in this culture. We're more pressured. I don't know. I remember having time. People had time for each other. I mean, this culture has changed, and it's not for the best.
No, I miss the 60s.
I don't know. I was too crazy then.
Something that works for me with this whole traffic and pedestrian, whatever I am, or I'm bicycling or walking, whatever, is, something will happen, and it's a near miss, near or far, but it's always annoying. But I always just remind myself, oh, I'm safe. Yeah, the guy pulled right in front of me in the crosswalk, 3 feet in front of me, but I'm safe.
Yes.
He didn't run me over.
Yes.
You may feel disregarded or whatever, but
Yes.
that's where I come back to. It's like, I'm safe.
Yes, I do that exactly that too. It's I'm safe now. It's because there is this negativity bias in the human brain. The human mind is not an organ for dispassionately finding truth. It developed for solving problems and confronting obstacles. So that's what it sees, and dangers. And then when you've had an experience like you just described, what happens is we react physiologically. There's adrenaline. And so the first thing we need before we talk about forgiving others and being nice about it is self-soothing. I'm okay. You're a good person. You're especially don't beat yourself up for not having a spiritual reaction to it. I mean, that's I also find this gesture really helpful. If you put your hand on your heart, it can really evoke all the feelings that need to be acknowledged, which is fear and anger and stuff, but also sadness. You get sad. There's a little kid in each one of us say, "You almost killed me." How could you be like this? I'm me. You can't. We all don't understand that in some level, and that part of us, I think you need to access. And be on that side of yourself. Be on your own side, not against anyone else so much, but but acknowledging. In the Buddha, the Hindus call it the Hridayam. It's the heart cave. That the heart cave is your sanctuary.
Because this is what we wish for. May with metta, may you be safe.
Yes.
May you be free.
Yes.
May you be happy. Well, we are safe.
Most of the time. Most of our moments are safe.
Until you get there. And then you're in a hospital being taken care of by great people.
Yeah, most of the moments of our lives we are safe.
And we're free.
Yes.
But I think the happy is where we get on the root part of it.
Well, I think the safe place, with the hand on the heart, is a good place to stop right now.
Oh, we have to stop. Okay.
We are out of time.
Well, thank you. Thank you
so
all.
much. Beautiful talk, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, business. So it's October. October 16th, next Sunday, Dave Rico will be our speaker. He's a psychologist, teacher, and writer in Santa Barbara and San Francisco who emphasizes Jungian, transpersonal, and spiritual perspectives in his work. He is the author of How to Be an Adult in Relationships. So he'll be our speaker next week. So Donna is the Pali word for giving. And we asked if you can to give a donation today of $10. But whatever you can give is greatly appreciated. And that, of course, covers this beautiful space that we get to come to every Sunday, as well as the Larkin Street dinners that Clint does for us once a month. All mailers, speakers, all of that. So whatever you can give once again would be great. And Dave, where are you, our host today? Please.
I'm your host. I'm pleased to be your host today. Let's see, I'll bring around the Donable, and you can hopefully give me your cash, and then we'll turn that in. And there is a sign-up sheet. If you haven't been included on our list, you can add your name, and we can send you emails giving you information about the activities of the Sangha. And there is hopefully hot water. I actually forgot to plug it in, and I just plugged it in recently. So if it's not completely hot, just wait for a minute. And you can leave your cups in the sink, and I'll take care of them after you leave. And there is a group that meets at the front door after the meeting, and you can go to lunch together and talk about whatever it is you want to talk about.
Thank you. And Clint.
Well, we've heard Tom and from people in this room about the value of service and also, engage Buddhism and so on, and looking for opportunities to practice that. Well, we give all you guys this opportunity. That's the kind of guy I am. As Roy mentioned, most of you know this, but I don't think everybody is familiar with the Market Street Project. It's a homeless shelter for young people. I think the cutoff age is 22. And it's a great shelter. They look after these young people. They counsel them. They help them get jobs. They feed them. But because they're a nonprofit, the budget's limited. The meals are very simple. And so once a month, we try to give them a feast. And it's I find it very rewarding. This thing has been going on for decades. Not always at Market Street, but another homeless shelter before that. I find it a very rewarding experience, and I think the team, and thank you for acknowledging me, but this isn't just me as responsible architect.
Right.
I get a team of really great people that some of them are regulars, some of them come and go. If you're interested in participating this Saturday, it's always the third Saturday of the month, which is this coming Saturday for this month. And I'm sort of trying to get the team together. If you're interested in participating in something like this, you can contact me outside, and I'll take your contact information, and we'll set it up. And Joey, I'm just looking at you because you're on my line of sight. You've been doing these dinners with us. Want to just describe your experience?
Well, it's joyful because the kids really appreciate it, and you get to meet them a little bit, talk to them, and it's a great experience.
And I remember doing this with you, it must be 20 years ago.
We've been doing this for about 25, 26
That
years.
is, I mean, you're...
Started when I was 7.
Well, your steadfastness is great. I mean, it's amazing. That's a long time.
Well, I know. It is amazing.
That's great. Thank you. Any other announcements? Hal?
Baruch Golden asked me to remind you that he is leading a half-day sit on Saturday the 22nd. It's here in San Francisco, and there are flyers out on the table about it.
Great, thank you.
I've spent the last couple of years learning to give a course on mindfulness-based pain reduction, and I'm not certified to do it yet, but I'm doing a practice course which costs far less. Basically, just an amount to pay for the space. It'll be here at the San Francisco Buddhist Center. It's an 8-week course, so it's similar to MBSR, but focused on pain management if you have chronic pain. And there's enough space for 2 more people. So this is my practice course. Never taught it, but I'm being overseen by another certified teacher. So if anybody feels like that's something that they might want to take and can afford to take a similar course, this would be a good opportunity.
When does it start?
It starts this Friday, a week from.
Is every Friday? This Friday? The next
Every
one?
Friday from 6 to 8:30. And I'm holding it upstairs. There's another shrine room upstairs.
Great. Excellent. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would just like to acknowledge Michael Murphy for his 10 years of service running retreats.
And there are copies of... Oh, Michael, go ahead.
I'd also like to acknowledge Jerry Jones for his 5 years of assistance.
I was just going to mention that there are copies of Queer Dharma. I think it's volume 2 that are on the table. They're for free. If you don't have one, please help yourself to one. And I think if that's it, let's go ahead and stand for the dedication of the hour. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. and they all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.